into another edition of the NFL Draft Show here on The Grueling Truth, where legends speak. I'm Dan Kornhauser, and I am here with our resident NFL Draft expert, Mr. Sam Teets. How are you, Sam? Happy Thursday.
Happy Thursday, Dan. Doing great. I'm excited for a bowl season, excited to get to the college football playoff.
Now, I am too. And full disclosure, folks, before we begin the show in its earnest, I want to let you guys know that I came into the show with the idea that this episode we would go over the first week of bowl games, see what prospects we recommend you follow, who you want to watch, things like that. But Sam made a very, very accurate and very important point earlier today to me. He said there's been a ton of opt-outs, and they're opt-outs for different reasons. So guys are declaring for the draft and opting out. Guys are transferring or entering the transfer portal. Others are sitting out for different reasons like injuries and so on and so forth. So there's a lot of names that are out. So I figured rather than jump into that, we can maybe sprinkle that in over the course of the show. And here we go. We got our first comment. Paul, we're going to get to you in a hot second. I'm excited. Paul, you're awesome. Thanks for tuning in. But instead of doing what we had initially planned, we're going to do something a lot more fun. And I'm very excited for this. I know it's not Monday, but it's time for a mock draft. Now, we did our first one a little over a month ago, I want to say. Let me just double check here because I have it on my – yeah. So we did the last one on November 10th. So we're a little over a month, and now it's time. A lot's happened. A lot's changed. We know a lot of guys who are declaring, some who are probably going to declare, looking for agents and such. So we're going to jump right into it. I need to get the clock up here. So let me slacken a little bit on that front. Hold on.
We need a timer, otherwise we'll go on forever. We'll take this the whole way.
Listen, there's a lot of knowledge to be shared here, so we gotta do this the right way.
Yeah, well, right. And before we get into it, I'll just say for this draft class, there are maybe 20 guys, maybe we'll say 23, 24 guys you feel really comfortable with as first round grades. And after that, it kind of drops off. So the end of the first round is always just, it's crazy. Like I could see pulling guys who's like number 60 on different dudes' boards and putting them in the first round just because the back end of the first round is so crazy. You're going to have a lot of traits-based bets, that kind of stuff. You're going to have a lot of different picks and variation there in the final 10 picks or so of the first round.
So I'm going to do 30 seconds for the clock.
Yeah, that's fine.
So we're not doing this for, an hour. So, you know what?
We've done that before. We've gone like an hour and a half before we put the clock on.
It got crazy. That's why we need a clock. So you know what? We're going to do the first half of the draft with 45 seconds per pick. That's your pick, okay, and that's your explanation. No trades, no tomfoolery. Let's jump right into it. Paul Sullivan, first comments of the day. Ohio State wins it all. And they very well may, but that game, against Georgia, is it, right?
That's really telling. I would love to see the Georgia versus Michigan matchup again. Kind of like last year where you had it in a conference championship game, then you had it for the final, for the whole thing. I would love to see that again. But I think Georgia right now, Georgia's a different beast than Ohio State in my opinion, especially defensively.
And we'll touch on the national championship in a later show. We still have over a month, I think, or something like that, till we get to that point. Something like that. But let's cut the shit. Let's do it. I'm going to share my screen. But first, I want to show you guys something because I've talked about this before, but I wanted to actually show you guys. So I do like a consensus big board where I take anywhere from 10 to 12 different big boards from some of the biggest names in the draft world, as well as some smaller names that most people don't know about, but are still really good big boards. And I rank them all. I follow them, and I do it throughout the season. I've kind of taken a little break, so some of these have only been updated a few weeks ago. But I'm going to wait till everyone declares and all that stuff happens before I start doing it again. But I wanted to share it with you guys. So can you see that screen okay?
Yep, that looks good.
All right, so here it is. Give me one sec. Let me try to see if I could zoom out. Give you a little better look. So Right now, this is all I've got. I have, of course, I'm going to have Sam's up there once he puts out his December big board. If he hasn't yet, we're gonna go back to that later on. But I'll have Sam's on there, Kuiper, McShay, the Draft Network, Pro Football Network, up and down. I think last year I had 12 or 13 big boards on my consensus, but this is what it is. I go deep. This is what I do. And I think I've got like 500 or so names on here. I delete guys as we go along, but this is what I'm going to use during our draft or during our mock draft here. So let me close out that. Let me pull up what we need. And we're going to be doing our mock draft on NFL mock draft database. There's also PFF has one. I know the Draft Network is redoing theirs to be released sometime in January. So there's other places you can do it. We like this one because it has the most prospects and it looks pretty. So we're going to jump right into it. I'm going to start the clock in a moment. Now, the last one we did, I did the odds, Sam did the evens. So now we're going to flip-flop. Sam, you're going to start us off with the first pick with the Houston Texans. You'll be doing the odds. I'll be doing the evens. Sam, are you ready?
Yeah, I'm all set.
Let's fucking do it. Start. You're on the clock.
All right. With the first overall pick, the Houston Texans really need to find an identity. We're looking at a team that could potentially have their second in a row one-and-done head coach. And I really think that's a possibility. I think there's a good shot Lovie Smith's not with this team next year. Now, if you look at it that way, you might say, let's build the trenches up. Let's build the foundation of the team more. I view it more as you need to find an identity for this team, and identity really starts with the quarterback. So I'm taking Bryce Young at the first overall pick. I understand he's small. I understand there's size concerns. I understand there's a whole lot of stuff you have to take in when making this pick. But Houston really needs to find some kind of stability with his organization moving forward. I don't think you can wait forever to bring in a quarterback. I don't think the general manager can wait forever to do this. So I think the quarterback has to be the pick. It's Bryce Young.
And that was 45 seconds exactly. You, my friend, are a legend. And I don't know why this ad popped up, but here we go. So first was Bryce Young, quarterback from Alabama. The Seattle Seahawks now sit second right now. They have 2 first-round picks, one that they were gifted last year's draft. But here we are. Seattle sitting at number 2 while fighting for the playoffs. They're in an interesting spot because not many playoff teams have these high draft picks. But that being said, they are not a team without issues. They need help on the edge. They probably need help along different spots of their defense, maybe the defensive line. But in this, I think it's obvious. I'm going to take Will Anderson. You plug him in, stud edge rusher from day one, difference maker, and helps them get to that Legion of Boom level from their Super Bowl winning years. Here we go. Chicago Bears, number 3 overall. You're on the clock.
Yeah, and there are 3 players in this draft that I feel really comfortable with no matter what. It's Bijan Robinson, Jalen Carter, and Will Anderson. Jalen Carter is still on the board. Obviously, he's not going to be Bijan Robinson at this spot, but Jalen Carter is still there. He's going to be the pick at 3 for me. They've had great interior defensive play in the passing, like when they had Akeem Hicks. They had, at one point, Robert Quinn. And they had Khalil Mack. They have had great defensive linemen in the past years that have really driven this team forward. They don't have that right now. Jalen Carter is the start of rebuilding in the trenches, especially on the defensive side of the ball for Chicago.
All right, Jalen Carter. Now that you mentioned him, do you have any concerns about the report that came out today that Jalen Carter might be dropping on some boards because of his lack of love for football and some other concerns?
None, not really. I mean, look, we saw this kid on Thibodeau where it's like, he doesn't really like yellow football. He doesn't really care about football, and everything turns out perfectly fine. I don't think he's hardly the first player to have this said about him in the pre-draft process.
No.
And frankly, I don't even know the credibility of the source. It's coming out from Todd McShay, who's hearing it from some agent from some NFL team who probably wants to instigate this move for some reason. So I don't have a lot of faith in really believing that. Is that possibly true? Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of guys in the draft every year who have question marks and that kind of stuff. But does it really impact a player of Jalen Carter's stature in the eyes of NFL teams? Probably not.
Yeah, I agree. We heard this, like you said, we heard the same thing about Kayvon Thibodeau last year. I had absolutely no concerns. He was still a top, 5 or top 6 guy on my board. He still ended up going in that range. I don't think it matters either, unless it's something crazy like, I don't know, like drugs, like with Tunzel, when that video with Tunzel came out, and he ended up dropping. It would have to be something like that for him to drop. But Jalen Carter, third on their big board, goes third overall to the Chicago Bears, and I am on the clock with my Detroit Lions. Now, I've seen a lot of different opinions of what the Lions should do with this pick. I've seen people crying that they should trade down, get a bevy of picks for a team that wants to trade up for either CJ Stroud or Will Levis. I've seen them maybe trade up and take Will Anderson if you think he's not going to be there. I've seen a bunch of other things, trade down for a corner or whatever. But let's be honest. As good as Jared Goff has been playing, he is not the long-term solution at the position. And while I don't necessarily agree with this sentiment, there are a lot of rumors and reports that Will Levis is the top quarterback in the draft for a lot of teams. So saying that they remind him of like what was it? Was it Josh Allen? I forgot what the comparisons were, but
for Levis, definitely they've been going to Josh Allen quite a bit.
I'm going to take Will Levis here. I actually have CJ Stroud higher on my board, and I like CJ Stroud a lot more at this point. But the physical is undeniable for Levis. Big arm, athletic, plays in a pro style offense. So I'll go with the rumors. I'll put Levis here. The Lions need a long-term solution at quarterback. And now the Philadelphia Eagles are on the clock at number 5. And I just want to let you know, in my mock, I have them going a very specific, special way and getting an absolute stud. So I'm curious to see what direction you go here.
Yeah, well, you left me with a lot of options on the board here. They have a lot of potential free agents. I think James Bradbury at corner is a free agent. Brandon Graham is a potential retirement. He's also the free agent. Javon Hargrave, Fletcher Cox are free agents. So is Ndamukong Suh and Linval Joseph. Robert Quinn's a free agent. Derek Barnett is on IR with one more year left on his deal. This, to me, has to be a defensive lineman or a cornerback at the spot. The corners are good in this year's draft class. I don't think they're good enough to take top 5. Looking at the defensive line, Miles Ripken is going to have some length concerns. He's not really a true the bendy guy. I'm looking more at Brian Brzee and Tyree Wilson as the pick here. Brian Brzee has some injury concerns. Tyree Wilson is probably the more physically dominant player of the 3, or at least the most physically unique player of the 3, considering his arm length and wingspan. I'm going to take Tyree Wilson here.
Tyree Wilson, right on the dot for 45 seconds. My gosh, you are on it. So Tyree Wilson, now this is a huge rise for Wilson. Now I think we had him. Let me see where we had him on our last mock. So we had him going number 11 to the Seahawks at that time, and this is actually, I think, the highest I've seen him on a mock draft. So that's something.
Well, you're hard out because yesterday I posted a mock draft where I had him going at 4 to Detroit. So I've had him going one spot higher. Listen, I've been on, and to be fair, in my defense, I've been on the Tyree Wilson bandwagon since August. I had him as a late first, early second round pick when I studied him in early August. So I've been on this route for a long time. It's just kind of all the momentum right now is just building in me, making my argument that, yeah, he should be a highly drafted player. And frankly, because of the tools he has, I think he will go before Myles Murphy.
And why not? He's uber athletic. He's long. He's got the bend over around the edge that you look for. He's I mean, the total package damn near is an edge rusher. Now me, on my more recent mock that I did, I had them taking Bijan Robinson here.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah, because I read recently that teams are looking at him and comparing him to Saquon Barkley, which makes a lot of sense. He's a great receiver out of the backfield. He did a lot of that in college. He's smooth. He's fluid. He's fast. He's got that breakaway speed. He's got that prototype size that you look for, height, weight. There's really no questions with him. So I actually had him going here. And, I mean, if the Giants did it with Saquon, and you really think that Robinson is maybe the best prospect in the class, why not take him number 5? What's his face? Miles Sanders is a free agent after the season. And let's be honest, he's having a great year, but he and Boston Scott are free agents. You're not bringing them both back probably. It would be nice to plug in a guy like Robinson. But I digress. The pick was indeed Wilson, edge rusher from Texas Tech, 5th overall. Now let's go to the Arizona Cardinals, sitting there at number 6. Now with the Arizona Cardinals, this is a weird team because we don't really know if their coach is going to be around at the end of the year. So with new coaches, and their GM is now no longer with the team. He left with some health issues. He's gone indefinitely. New regimes mean crazy things happening. And if they don't like someone that they have on the board, they might trade down. Maybe they trade up, make a big move. But they need help on the O-line. They need help in the secondary, and they need help at edge rusher. Losing Chandler Jones was ugly, and they haven't placed it. They got young guys, but they could use a lot more. Anyone at this point is going to be a reach, besides a guy like maybe Myles Murphy. I'm going to lean towards them maybe feeling good about the young edge rushers they have that they took in the middle rounds this year, including Cam Thomas, who they took out of San Diego State. But this is a little early for me, but I'm going to give him Peter Skoronski here. He'll be the top offensive lineman when it's all said and done come draft day, but he's damn good. And he's been a top 10 pick through most of this year. It wouldn't surprise me to see him go there. He lacks the prototype in some ways, but I mean, he's been rock solid otherwise, and they need offensive line help. They need it so bad. The only other guy I was considering here was Myles Murphy, but if they're going to go with their young edge rushers, you don't need Murphy. Now, before we continue, I just want to remind everyone that the grueling truth is powered by betting.net. Betting.net is your best bet for finding the online casino or sports book that's right for you. So head on over to betting.net. Let's move on. The clock is a ticking, and the Colts are on the clock.
Yeah, this is probably the worst team to draft for, honestly, because of where they're located in the draft and what they need. They need quarterback. I don't really feel comfortable with any of the QBs at this point in the draft. They need tackle. Paris Johnson, to me, is the top tackle available right now. It would be a reach to take him this high. Personally, I would like to take him more in the teens if I could. I might end up going there anyways, though, because of the need they have at left tackle right now. Yannick Ngakoue is a pending free agent, so maybe you go edge rusher. It's a pretty tricky situation. I don't really love any of my options here for Indianapolis. I think they're going to feel pressure to take quarterback this year, but I just don't think this is a spot to do it. I really don't think this is the class to do it or the position in the draft to take a QB. If I'm the Colts in this situation, Myles Murphy's still on the board, I'm going to make it Myles Murphy here. And I would understand the argument for Paris Johnson. I totally would get it to help with that offensive line because they desperately need help on offense right now. But Myles Murphy is a much better talent, much more secure talent to me than Paris Johnson.
All right, so Myles Murphy, 5th on the mock draft database board, goes 7th overall to the Indianapolis Colts, one of your Clemson boys. And now here we go. The Vegas Raiders on the clock, 8th overall. And this is a weird spot because they've been playing a lot lately. So it's weird to see them in the top 10. But here we go. So the Raiders, another one, offensive line, edge rusher, defensive line. There's a lot of mocks that I see them going offensive tackle here. Personally, don't get it. I think their interior needs more help. I know Colton, what's his name? Colton Miller on the left tackle has been playing a lot better. And I know they have a hole at right tackle considering they released, Alex Leatherwood or whatever.
Yeah, Alex Leatherwood.
So they released him, bust of a pick. I don't think they're going to take a quarterback here, but there's a lot of questionable options around there otherwise. I don't think edge is really something they take this high, but they could use some more help up front overall. So I'm going to give him Brian Say here. He's the defensive lineman from Clemson. He was 9th overall on their big board. On my consensus big board, he sits 8th. So not too far off. And CJ Stroud is still on the board with the Panthers on the clock. Does Kev sprint to the podium?
I don't think they will. I mean, CJ Stroud at this point in the draft cycle is more of a guy who gets taken in the teens, in my opinion. He's going to fall more in that Justin Fields to Mac Jones range, in my opinion, based on what he's shown and based on what he's working with currently. because his tools are good, but they're not fantastic. So I think he's looking more like a pick that would go in the teens. The only situation, though, is the general manager in Carolina, similar to the general manager in Indianapolis, is really feeling the pressure right now to win, to do something, because he survived the firing of their head coach, and that means he's probably got 1 more year, maybe 2 more years at most, to turn things around here. He feels the pressure to take a quarterback. There are better options on the board, but I am going to take C.J. Stroud here just to kind of fulfill. I mean, predictably, this is what I think they would do. They would have to take C.J. Stroud because they feel the need to win now or show some kind of progress. With all respect to Sam Darnold, we know who he is. He's not going to be able to play just to sustain winning football. And I think Stroud is definitely an upgrade over Darnold.
Plus, they'd have to explain to their fans why they pass on yet another quarterback and decided to go with whoever else at the position. So their fans don't have a draft day event like Bo Callahan and whatnot. They take C.J. Stroud. The fall finishes. Stroud goes number 9 overall, and the Atlanta Falcons are on the clock. And the Atlanta Falcons, another weird team, because, hey, if they really want to commit to the run, Bijan Robinson's a hell of an option here. And Sam, I know on your last big board, you had Robinson, number 1 on your big board, right?
I think I still I Will Anderson 1. I have Robinson top 3 though.
Gotcha. So regardless, if a top 3 prospect falls to number 10, in most cases, when your team has a need at the position, because let's be honest, they drafted Tyler Allgeier, but he's nothing special coming out of BYU. He's been all right. Cordero Patterson's good for him, but he's old as hell, and who knows how long he's still going to be around. And they don't even like him as their full-time running back. So that would be a very good option. But they have to address the defensive side of the ball. I think they have to. They have to. And a guy like Jared Verse is another one who is rising rapidly. He could very well be the best edge rusher in this class with some coaching because he's far from a finished product, but the physical is there. I think this might be his ceiling unless he blows up at the combine. But I think Verse at number 10 overall for the Falcons, they finally get that difference maker on the edge.
Yeah, that hit me with a real surprise pick there. That's the highest I've seen him go. But I mean, hey, I love Verse though. Verse is one of my guys this year. Verse is gonna be one of my dudes. I do think there's a shot he follows that Jermaine Johnson path the whole way through, where he blows up the combine, blows up the pre-draft process after having a breakout year at FSU.
But he's not going to drop to the 20s.
I can't guarantee you that. I can't guarantee you that. It comes down to the evaluation comes down really to how NFL teams look at Nolan Smith and Isaiah Foskey, because those are the two, in my opinion, that could potentially hop Jared Verse. I don't have him above him on my board. But if a team was to take one of those guys and kind of like trickles down the edge rushing class, pushes guys down a little bit more, that's where you could see Verse potentially reach the 20s.
I'm not a fan of Foskey. I mean, he's got good tools, but I see him as more of a power rusher than anyone with some good flexibility in the hips or anything like that off the edge. So I don't know if I'm comfortable taking Foskey in the top 15. I think he's a first-round pick, especially because of the position he plays, but I'd be surprised if he went this high or higher.
Yeah, I think he'll be a first-round pick, but he's not going to get a first-round grade from me. I think he'll be more of like a high second.
Yeah,
when it comes down to my board.
Yeah, agreed. Same. So you're on the clock. Jacksonville Jaguars, 11th overall.
All right, well, we left a lot of talent for me. In the past, I haven't had at least one receiver going in the top 10. Not this time around, so this makes it fairly simple for me. I think they will be tempted to look offensive lineman at this point, but I'm taking Quentin Johnson. I am. Quentin Johnson is a difference maker, and he is going to be, in my opinion, the top receiver taking this draft class because of how he moves at that size. He's played through some injuries here in the second half of the season, but the movement skills he has at that size, the ability to win vertically, and be able to even like sink his hips and just make cuts the way he does with that build is really impressive. You saw him go against Julius Brents in the conference championship. Julius Brent's another massive dude, is like 6'2", 6'4", well over 200 pounds, long arms, and he torched him for most of the game, in my opinion. So I think Quentin Johnson is going to be the first receiver taken off the board here. Pair him with Trevor Lawrence, who's having a couple of really good games this year, and you got to feel comfortable with your offense moving forward.
Listen, number 1, Silky Johnston. That's my boy. I love this guy. Perfect size, speed, everything that you look for, damn near. Number 1. And number 2, Trevor Lawrence. They traded for Ridley from the Falcons. So he'll be there next year. They had a guy like Johnston, and Lawrence's development arc goes to the moon. And this kid's been playing damn good football since week 9. He's got 11 touchdowns, no interceptions. In that time frame, the Jaguars have beaten a couple of playoff teams, and he's played really well. He looks the part. And I know I was talking with Mike about this last night on the NFL Pick'em show, and Mike's still a little on him.
Yeah, Mike hated Trevor coming out. Mike did not like him at all.
But and he said, for number 1 overall pick, this is kind of slow for his development. But listen, not everyone jumps in and is Andrew Luck from day one. Not everyone jumps in. I mean, Peyton went 3-13 his rookie year and threw 20-something picks. Sure, the next year I think he won like 10 or 13 games or something ridiculous like that. But we're talking about a Hall of Fame GOAT legend. Lawrence may not be Peyton Manning, and that's okay. But I'm very pleased with what I've seen from him thus far, especially since the week 9. Everything is clicking, and now division rival Houston Texans sitting on the board, 12th overall. Sam went Bryce Young with their first overall pick. Pretty solid. As you see here, they gave it an A+ grade. Now, who do the Texans take now? Well, pick whoever you want. Best player available. A receiver, a defensive lineman, an edge rusher along the offensive line. They could still use help, even though they do have a couple of good pieces. I really wanted to go with an edge here, but there's really no one I think is worth this pick. And with a quarterback being taken, you're going to want to give him something. Now, is it going to be a receiver, a slot guy like Jordan Addison? I don't think so. I'm going to do something different, and I'm going to do something special. What do they say about tight ends, Sam, when it comes to young quarterbacks? Oh, a quarterback's best friend. I'm going to take Michael Mayer right here for the Houston Texans at 12th overall. Is it pretty? No. But they need something at the tight end. They do need more help overall on that offense. And Meyer's arguably the best tight end we've seen in a few years. And he should slide right in, inline tight end, flex him out, do whatever you want. I think it's a great pick.
Yeah, Mayer's an interesting one because there are some wildly different opinions on him.
Mm-hmm.
There are some people, like the Draft Network just released their most updated top 100. And they had him like top 10 grade. And I think you're going to see people who are going to have him as the high second-round grade. And you're really going to have to see it. It can come down to what a team is valuing in the modern NFL. Because in my opinion, someone like Mayer is going to be a guy who's going to contribute in the running games, can help you as a blocker, but he's probably going to be like an 800 to 950-yard receiver in terms of his production. And the question that's going to be asked is that worth it in the modern NFL compared to drafting a Jordan Addison who might get you 1,200 yards but won't contribute as a run blocker? So you have to figure out the philosophy there in terms of how you draft.
Well, I'm assuming they bring back Lovie Smith. He's an old school coach. They like to run the ball. Pierce is a stud at running back. So, I mean, why not? Hell, it's a mock draft. This will change a billion times up until draft day. And to your point, talking about people that have different, widely different opinions on him, to give you an idea, Vinny Iyer at Sporting News has him at 6 on his big board, which is the highest that I've tracked thus far. The lowest is Charlie Campbell over at Walter Football. Charlie's really good with the big boards, and he has him at 27th on his board. Someone in the middle, Tankathon's got him at 17, and Michael Renner over at PFF has him at number 13 on his big board. So you're right. He's a bit all over the board there, but doesn't affect the quality of his talent at all. And your Pittsburgh Steelers are on the clock.
Yeah, I am looking at 3 options here. Cornerbacks, Joey Porter Jr. and Christian Gonzalez, or tackle Paris Johnson Jr.
Okay.
Dan Moore at left tackle is just not good enough, frankly, to be a starter in the NFL, in my opinion. At least a starter on a team that has a quality offensive line, which Pittsburgh doesn't right now. So Paris Johnson is up there, and certainly defensive backs have not been good since we lost Steven Nelson and Joe Hayden. We need to basically probably bring in almost 2 new, or at least I'd say 1 new starting outside corner if we were going to keep Cameron Sutton on the outside. There are a lot of good corners in this draft class. I think you can find a corner in the later rounds. You cannot find a tackle in the later rounds. So as much as Paris Johnson Jr., I believe, is a little overrated in terms of some of the spots I've seen him go, he's going to be the pick here just because it's a scarcity. there's not as many good offensive tackles in this year's draft class, especially at left tackle, than there are corners. There are a lot of good corners you can pick later in the draft.
And we talked about the Steelers' needing offensive line in last year's draft and how disgusted you were with the situation going into the season. And that thought hasn't changed much.
No. I mean, I still think you need 3 new starters potentially on the offensive line. Left tackle being one of them.
Listen, the Chiefs did it. The Bengals did it. Why not the Steelers?
Why not?
All right. Paris Johnson, Jr., offensive tackle from Ohio State, goes 13th overall to the Steelers. I am now on the clock with the Green Bay Cheeseheads, Packers. Now, I don't like Green Bay sitting here. I really don't. Their needs line up pretty well with the board as it's fallen right now. But are they really going to take another young wide receiver? We know how much Aaron Rodgers hates young wide receivers. So are they really going to take one, especially right here in the first round? Maybe, maybe not. But it's definitely much more of a Green Bay Packers thing to take a defensive player in the first round. It's what they do. But who do they take? Do they go for maybe an Antonio Johnson, which just is a little early for my taste? I think it's a little early for Brian Branch. But there are still some really good talented players there. I'm going to take Christian Gonzalez, corner from Oregon. Now, you're going to say, Dan, but they got Alexander. They just drafted another corner a couple of years ago from Georgia, Stokes. Yep. So why would they do this? Because this is what they do. They hate Aaron Rodgers. They love nothing more than to piss him off. And what would piss him off than taking another cornerback in the first round? But Christian Gonzalez is a hell of a prospect. I'm a huge fan. As the years gone on, I like him more and more. So why not take Christian Gonzalez? Maybe they flex one of these guys. Maybe move Stokes to free safety or something. But I go BPA here. And all right. You got it. Detroit Lions, 15th overall. Let's see who their second pick's going to be.
You took one of the guys I was considering, honestly, but you left me Keely Ringo and Joey Porter Jr., which makes my life a little bit easier. I know there's varying levels of belief Lions fans have in Jeff Okudah and his ability to continue to develop and be a long-term option at corner. Mm-hmm. You're also considering what has Jerry Jacobs shown this year. Chase Lucas is on IR. Do you trust him to play outside? You have a bunch of, I think, in my opinion, half answers at cornerback right now. You don't really know for sure what you're going to have 3 years down the line. I feel very comfortable taking Joey Porter Jr. here at this point. This is the range where I would love to get him. I'm going to take him off the board here and give him to Detroit. You get another corner with excellent arm length. You know he's going to be really physical. And I think he's going to be a better long-term option than someone like Keely Ringo in the NFL.
And, that defense is butt. Keep adding talent, right?
Yeah, your defense is giving, your offense is scoring a lot of points this year. Credit to your offensive coordinator for the play calls he's making, but your defense right now is not living up to it. Now, before we move on, we are at the halfway point, which means I'm going to make the clock 30 seconds now. Well, you know what? I'm going to make this pick, and then I'll make it 30 seconds. Now, you know what? Hold on a second. Do they have this going to number 32? Yeah, they have all the way going to 32.
All right, so I'll make the clock 30 seconds after this pick. But before I go on, the Grueling Truth is powered by betting.net. Betting.net is your best bet for finding the online casino or sportsbook that's right for you. So head on over to betting.net. Okay, clock is started. The Los Angeles Superchargers sitting on the clock. They still can't stop the run. All types of injuries, all sorts of problems. They could probably use help on the D-line. They could probably use another offensive lineman, preferably at right tackle. They could use another defensive back. The board is ugly. The board is really ugly. But there's one player that stands out, fills a need, very talented, quality program, beefy, emphasis on the beef. I'm going to have them taking Broderick Jones here. Plug that man in at right tackle and have one of the best, if not the best, young pair of bookends in the NFL.
Yeah, this is actually the pick I had them make my mock draft the other day.
No way!
I'm totally on board with this one.
Love it. So Sam gives that an A+. Now, Sam, you're on the clock with the Seahawks. You got 30 seconds.
Yeah, this is tough because this is where I gave Jared Verse last time. I gave Seattle Jalen Carter and Jared Verse my mock draft. So you really messed me up from the start when you gave him Will Anderson. So I have to make this pick on the fly here. And I'm looking for the board. Seattle's such a weird team to draft for, man. They have a type. They really do. And I don't think that we have many of that type of player available right now. I wouldn't be shocked, frankly, they took Anthony Richardson at this point. Like, that would be one of the least surprising things I would see from them in a long time, considering their draft history. But I do look at corner, and I think cornerback's an area you can solidify, especially on the outside for them. Of the available players left, I think Keely Ringo might be that kind of, you know how they like. They're like the big physical dudes on the outside. Look at what they're doing this year with Tariq Woolen. I think Tariq Woolen's a little bit more of a fluid athlete than Keely Ringo. But I do think Keely Ringo is someone they feel comfortable taking. So I'm going to give him the cornerback from Georgia.
Now, Ringo, we're not talking about the Beatles, but Ringo's another guy who is kind of up and down the board at this point. Now, on the consensus board, he sits like 18th or something like that. But looking at this, he's everywhere, and this is crazy. From 10th overall on Tankathon's big board to number 51 on Bleacher Reports. He's 32nd on Charlie Campbell's. So you're really all over the place with this guy.
He might be my cornerback 6 this year, honestly. Like I
was going to say,
I've studied the little guys. I've studied the little guys in this year's draft, from Devin Witherspoon and Clark Phillips. I like them a lot more than like Keely Ringo. And I understand they'll probably go lower than him because they're smaller dudes who might have to play in the slot. But I like him better than Keely Ringo.
Ringo's athletic as hell, but questions in coverage. And when you're a corner who can't cover, that's a problem.
Yeah, well, Ringo's thing is he's really good vertically. Like, if you try throwing vertical on him, I think Tennessee tried throwing the Cedric Tillman on him vertically, and he just erased it, had an interception, and he ran the route the entire way. He is tremendous in a straight line. If you put like a Jordan Addison on him, it's his worst nightmare. He will not be able to cover that guy.
That's disappointing, especially for top 20 pick. But I digress. Moving on. The New York Jets on the clock, 18th overall, gunning for the playoffs. Very specific needs, particularly along the offensive line. They could probably stand to add another defensive back. I mean, their corners have been playing well, and you expect them to be well coached on, but you could always add more to that side. They could also use a linebacker. And we didn't do it last time. I'm going to do it now. It might be a little ugly to take a linebacker at this point. Why is there another? What's with these ads, man? Why would a clock have ads? Anyway, it's ugly, but I'm going to take Trenton Simpson here out of Clemson. Plug that man in at linebacker. They're kind of old anyway. They do need talent. C.J. Mosley might be out after this season. We'll see. Athletic, young. What are your thoughts on the pick?
Yeah, I think Trenton Simpson's a very versatile player. It'll come down to having a defined role for him, because he's kind of moved around a bit at Clemson. This year has not been as productive as last year because his role changed. So it'll be interesting to see how he transitions to the NFL. Because a lot of Clemson linebackers are uber athletic. They play in that role that doesn't really translate to the NFL, and they go to the NFL and they have some struggles out the gate. I think Trenton Simpson will do better than someone like Isaiah Simpson. Simpson's more of a true linebacker. But I just really think it comes down to having a defined role for him and knowing that you have a fit for him in your defense.
Perfect. And you know what? Someone like Robert Saleh, I think he'll find plenty of ways to use Simpson. And with that, Tampa Bay Buccaneers are on the clock.
Man, I wish this pick was a little bit later. I would give him Anton Harrison if this pick was like 5 or 6 picks later. I really would. And I watched Anton Harrison the other day. I am sold that this guy will be a first-round pick. But at 20 or at 19, it's a little bit rich. I'm trying to think about who I would even want to give a team that's in such a limbo, because you don't know what Tom Brady's doing. I mean, this all comes down to essentially, what are you hiring? Are you firing Todd Bowles? Are you changing head coaches? Are you changing quarterbacks? There's a whole lot that's not been determined yet in Tampa Bay. I'm just going to go for a player who I know is a solid offensive piece in that premier position. I'm going to give him Rashee Rice, receiver from SMU. And that might be a little bit of a weird pick. I understand why it's considered a weird pick. But I feel very comfortable in him being a competent NFL player. And there's not many guys at this point. We're reaching the end of the teens. We're getting close to the 20s. Not many guys that feel comfortable with being competent NFL players at this point.
And you very, very interesting. Rice ahead of Addison, JSN. I mean, there's some big names still at the position.
I think Rice, in terms of what they like to do in Tampa Bay, in terms of some of the vertical stuff they do to Mike Evans, I think Rice is the better comparison to that, or a better fit for that specifically.
So just keep giving him weapons. He'll have Evans. Whoever the quarterback is will have Evans. They'll have Godwin, and now they'll have Rice.
Yep, that's essentially how I view it. Just keep throwing stuff at the wall and see, and hope it helps you out. I mean, just raise the floor of the offense by putting as many weapons out there as possible.
It's pretty beefy, I'm not going to lie. But with that, Rice is off the board at 19th to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And now the Tennessee Titans are on the board. And I don't necessarily know if they run to the podium if the board folds this way, because they do have needs along the offensive line. Their O-line is butt cheeks. They do have needs in the secondary, particularly at corner. But if this guy's on the board, I know they drafted a first-round wide receiver last year. They need a lot of help at the position. I'm going to take Jordan Addison. Plug that man in the slot and go to work. They need to add talent.
No, I'm 100% there with you. I think that's a slam dunk pick. I only hate it because it goes right before New England, and if he was there for New England, it would have been a slam dunk for me as well. That's the only reason I hate it.
It's all right. Hashtag cock block. Hashtag let's do it. Patriots are on the clock, 21st overall.
Yeah, and this is another weird team to pick for just because of some of the scheme stuff they do on offense and defense. Frankly, they're still a bit of a fossil team, in my opinion, some of the stuff they like to run. Oh, man.
Oh, boy.
Corner, I'm going to give him – there are two guys I'm considering here, Josh Downs and Cam Smith. Those are the two players. I know they're both a little bit controversial in terms of where they go in the draft every time we go through this mock draft cycle.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to go Cam Smith. I think Smith is – athletic enough to play some of the main coverage assignments they'd like to give out there in New England. And frankly, looking at their cornerback depth, I do think Jack Jones can continue to be a contributor. They like to play Marcus Jones on offense now. Jonathan Jones is a pretty solid player as well. But Jalen Mills is trying to play some coverage stuff. I just don't think he can at this point in his career. And frankly, I don't think he ever should at his point in his career. So I feel much more comfortable plugging Cam Smith in there and increasing the versatility of that cornerback room.
I love this pick. I really like Cam Smith as a prospect. And to give you an idea of where he falls on other big boards, the lowest that he's at is at 17 on Bleacher Reports. The highest he sits is 12th. And that's pretty much on 3 or 4 boards. So it's pretty clear that this is his range, but I think it's a slam dunk for New England. And now the Washington Commanders, the Commanders, are now on the clock, 22nd overall. Now, here's a question. Do you trust Heineke? Do you trust Wentz? Do you do something at that position? Do you look at maybe a corner because they do need help in the secondary? They seemingly always need help in the secondary. But it's quarterback, offensive line, corner, quarter, and offensive line, I think, are the 3 biggest needs. The way the board falls in this spot, I don't know, man. I'm kind of liking Clark Phillips. I'm going to take Clark Phillips here. I know he's probably more of a slot corner, but in the NFL, when the teams are running 3 wide 80% of the time, a guy like Phillips, you plug him right in and you don't look back.
Yeah, he is super athletic. He is really twitched up, and he's going to be able to mirror receivers fairly easily. He's a really good player. And
now, the New York Football Giants, 23rd overall. I got to hear this. I'm excited. There's a lot of ways they can go. What are you doing?
Yeah, there are a lot of ways you can go. And frankly, I'm looking at the board right now, and I see, like, you could go maybe Anthony Richardson if you want to swing for the stars. You got Devin Witherspoon, who's still out there. I think I like a little bit more than Clark Phillips, in my opinion. Jackson Smith and Jigba's there. Josh Downs is there. The guy who I feel most confident being a really good NFL player of this whole group is Devin Witherspoon. I know that the cornerback class is deep this year, but Devin Witherspoon to me is a different animal. You watch this guy play, he's a little bit undersized, but he's super feisty, super aggressive. And I think he has the athleticism and he has the ball skills to be an outside corner despite the size limitations.
Devin Witherspoon, corner from Illinois, 33rd on their big board here at NFL Mock Draft Database. But he's going to New York, 23rd overall. And honestly, I'm a little disappointed because I thought this was the perfect place for Bijan Robinson to come off the board. And again, we did this last time. I'm disgusted that he's still on the board. Now I know why.
It's so hard to tell though because I think Bijan Robinson will go higher because he is the best running back prospect since Saquon Barkley. But I saw Brett Coleman trying to make the argument on Twitter today that the Eagles at the back end of the first round should take Bijan Robinson. I'm like, why would the Eagles do the Eagles? We went over all the concerns they have with free agents and guys who might retire and all stuff. Why would the Eagles, a team primed to win the Super Bowl now, take Bijan Robinson when their identity has always been trench play and you're losing all these players in the trenches? So I just that's the issue with me for Bijan Robinson. There's so many other needs at premier positions that teams have baked their identity into. I just don't know. I just don't know where he's going to go, man. It's so hard to predict.
I mean, I think 5th for the Eagles is money. I mean, like I said, if the Giants took Barkley 2nd overall when Eli was there, thinking that they could extend Eli's career or whatever, it was dumb. And now they're going to have to pay the man. But, I mean, Philadelphia has Hurts still on his rookie deal. They've got 2 running backs, like I said, are free agents. I think 5 is his highest. Maybe Arizona, depending on what the next head coach thinks about Connor in the backfield. But not Indy, not maybe Carolina if they don't take a quarterback. Vegas has got Jacobs, who they're probably going to bring back. Maybe the Falcons, not the Jaguars, not the Texans, not the Steelers, not Detroit, not the Chargers, not Seattle, not the Jets, maybe Tampa Bay. So, I mean, none of these teams need running backs. So it's real threatening, but I am very disgusted that this man is still dropping. But I digress. I'm now on the board, 24th overall with the Denver Broncos, and we're actually making some pretty solid time. We're going a little longer than I thought we would, but it's fine. We're doing this, mock draft time. So, with the Broncos, sitting pretty. Well, not really, because they should be picking higher because they're butt cheeks. But I think they need more help at wide receiver. They just can't get past the injuries to their top 2 guys. Sutton is a lost cause. Their offensive line is pathetic, and they could use help in the secondary. All that being said, give Russell Wilson another piece. And he's been injured this year, so maybe he falls a little bit. But I'm going to go with JSN, Jackson Smith. And how do you pronounce this last name?
Njigba.
I thought so. Okay, so Jackson Smith and Njigba, Ohio State wide receiver, probably a slot guy, but they've got talent at receiver, so they could afford that. Boom. Baltimore's on the clock, and I probably cock-blocked you with this pick too.
Possibly. But you know what? I'm going to stop the slide. I'll be the hero.
I can be your hero, baby.
Yeah, we're going to take Bijan Robinson here at this point. Do you hear music, by the way? I had music playing in my headphones. I don't know if it's on my side or not.
I don't hear shit.
Okay, it's me. I got to figure out where that's coming from. But I'm going to take Bijan Robinson in this pick because I think he's, like you said, a top 5 prospect at the very least in this draft class. And you know how I like to run the ball. You know how that offense is working right now. Now, this could all change, of course, if they can't get Lamar Jackson to sign a long-term extension. But they'll probably franchise tag him anyways. They've had injuries to their running backs the past couple of years at this point. Bijan Robinson, like we talked about, is an absolute stud. I think he changes the dynamics of that running back room, and he makes the offense a lot more explosive.
All right. The drop is over. I was really hoping he wouldn't fall all the way to the Eagles again and just be a shoo-in for there. But Bijan Robinson, 25th overall to the Baltimore Ravens. And before we continue, I want to remind you guys that the best place to find a bet for you would be betting.net. Betting.net offers expert and user reviews for every online sportsbook and casino in your state. So head on over to betting.net. And the next one, I promise, will be a little smoother with the delivery. But here we go. On the clock, Cincinnati, 26. Another team, very clear needs. I still think they need help along the offensive line. I know Mike, for one, is not a fan of their offensive tackles. He hates Jonah Williams. They still need help at corner, despite having a lot of talent there. They do have some guys coming up in free agency. And they need help, I'd say, some depth along the offensive line. I don't like anything that I'm seeing. I don't like anything that I'm seeing at all. And I know you said at the beginning, the end of the first round is where it gets ugly and crazy and whatever.
Might I toss a name out there for you?
Toss a name.
Anton Harrison.
You know what? I had Anton Harrison queued up, and I actually have him there, but I don't want to do that. It seems too obvious for me. I don't know why. Is that bad?
No. It's a mock draft. You're supposed to have fun. You're supposed to throw twists in there and have fun with it.
I'm gonna go with Osiris Torrance here. One of the best interior offensive linemen in the in college football. No, I think he was number one PFF graded interior offensive lineman, for what that's worth for you analytic people. Plug and play, offensive guard. Let's do it. Keep Burrow upright. And the Dallas Cowboys, 27th overall on the clock. Boom.
Yeah, and this might be a bit of a surprising pick considering what they've dealing with recently, but they have had injuries along the offensive line this year. I think Tyron Smith, they're saying he might come back this year. They're saying he might come back in the near future. He's under contract after the season for one more year.
Mm-hmm.
I think just with the injuries, the wear and tear on his body, you have to start looking at getting our offensive lineman to play tackle. And I'm going to just take the name I mentioned earlier. I'm going to take Anton Harrison here to eventually play left tackle for you. I think he's a really good player. I watched him. I know people are saying he's a really good pass blocker, but there are concerns about his ability to run block. I watched this guy roll through guys against Kansas State for 60 minutes. He's legit. He has power in his lower half and in his upper body. So I think Anton Harrison has a real shot to be a late first-round pick here. And plug him in for Dallas. Maybe he doesn't play a lot year one, but I think he'll succeed Tyron Smith eventually.
I was going to say, what about the other Smith? He's going to be a guard?
I think you can play him a guard, but I think you can also replace Terrence Steele at right tackle. Because Terrence Steele is a very up-and-down player, in my opinion, who you might not want to pay the big bucks to long-term.
So, in this case, you'd have Harrison
Tyler Smith,
right tackle?
Right tackle, and then Anton Harrison left tackle.
And Tyler Smith at guard.
No, Yes, for next year I would have Tyler Smith at guard, Tyron Smith at one tackle spot, Anton Harrison potentially at one tackle spot, depending on how available he is, how ready he is. Tyron Smith is a free agent after next year, and he's not going to give you a sign at that point. Anton Harrison's one tackle, Tyler Smith is your other tackle, and there's your bookend tackles for the next however many years.
Oh man, hold on a second. Not to completely change the subject for a second, but that's exactly what I'm going to do. This is awesome because I am a Yankees fan. The Yankees finally signed Carlos Rodon, 6-year, $162 million contract with a 2-time All-Star starting pitcher, beefing up that rotation. Really excited about that. Sorry, I had to do it. I know it's a draft show, but I had to do it. I am very happy right now.
Oh, and also to chime in there, Terrence Steele recently tore his ACL, so he won't be ready to play next year. So
Sam getting back to business, but yes, go on.
Yeah, so I was just going to say, Terrence Steele's not going to be ready to play right tackle early next year. So you're going to have a tackle spot open. Whether you want that to be Tyler Smith kicked outside or you want it to be Anton Harrison to make your pick. But I think it just makes it more viable to have Anton Harrison in that locker room, knowing that Terrence Steele's not going to be ready for next year, to start at least.
All right, so Harrison from Oklahoma, offensive tackle, going 27th to the Cowboys. And I am back on the clock with the Kansas City Chiefs at 28th overall. And I think this is where the slot for this guy. I'm going to take Isaiah Foskey here. Pretty simple, pretty straightforward. They need edge help. They need defensive line help. They need defensive help, period. I could have taken a number of guys here on the defensive side. Antonio Johnson, Nolan Smith, Felix and Uzoma, BJ Ojolari, all solid options. But I think Foskey would fit right in with what Kansas City likes to do up front. And now the Minnesota Vikings are on the clock.
Yeah, I just got to check one contract for them to see if they need to replace a guy. But this is a team I would love to pick a cornerback for, except all the corners are already gone. So there's really no opportunity to do that. I was checking Harrison Smith's contract because if his contract was up, I was going to take Brian Branch. But Harrison Smith's under contract for 3 more years. So there's really no reason to go do that right now.
Okay.
I think my default plan for the Vikings has always just been go edge. I think that's where I'm at with them right now. I just go edge rusher. Keep adding talent to that defensive line. And among this group, I know Nolan Smith's not their typical defensive lineman. They like to have bigger-bodied edge rushers, but Nolan Smith plays way above his body weight, especially against the run. So I'm going to take Nolan Smith here, even if he's not necessarily a perfect scheme fit.
Nolan Smith, edge rusher from Georgia. Great selection. I don't mind that, not one bit here. And now the Buffalo Bills sitting pretty, 30th overall. And I mean, if Bijan Robinson was on the board, I would have ran to the podium right here. Singletary, meh. Cook, meh. Nyheim Hines, meh. And adding a guy like Robinson would force them to run the ball, even if they didn't want to. But he's not here. I'm not taking Gibbs, but they do need help in the secondary. I'm going to go with Antonio Johnson here. I'm a huge fan. I'm glad he declared. When Buffalo lost both their starting safeties, it's been trouble. Their secondary is ravaged by injuries. Their corners aren't good. Their safeties aren't good now. So I think Johnson will be a plug and play. And at the very least, if they want to keep the two vets at safety, he could back them up or be a sub guy and maybe even play some linebacker like he has at Texas A&M in nickel or in dime or something like that. So I'll take Johnson here, safety, Texas A&M, 30th overall. And now the Philadelphia Eagles are on the clock at number 31.
Yeah, I goofed around with this pick in my mock draft and gave him Darnell Washington just for the joy of being able to see Darnell Washington and Dallas Goedert be tight ends in 2 or 3 tight end formations, having the run block just for the fun of it. But in reality, I really don't know what to do with this pick. This is a kind of maybe like a take up best player available kind of situation for Philadelphia because they need help in the trenches a little bit just for depth, but I don't really like the offensive lineman available at this point. Even the defensive side of the ball, the defensive lineman, I'm not taking Gervin Dexter to the side.
Nope.
Maybe you take maybe it's Felix Anudike-Uzomah. I'm going to go over with Brian Branch here. Brian Branch is a very versatile safety. In my opinion, he's the best quote-unquote safety prospect in this draft class. And you're taking him to a defense that will have C.J. Gardner-Johnson at some point back next year. Get your 2 really versatile players in the secondary. And I'll let you move some of the younger guys like Reed Blankenship, Kayvon Wallace, and not necessarily have to play those dudes right now.
I love this selection. I think this is a great pick. And I'm a huge fan of Brian Branch as well. Not only can he play safety, but he plays a lot in the slot for Alabama as well. So that versatility will help him out. And that being said, we're on the final pick. Well, technically the first round is over, but we got a little bonus one because that's what they have. So that's what we're doing. We're rolling with the punches. The Texans are back on the clock with what's called a round 1, pick 32, but the Dolphins lost their first round pick for violating rules or whatever the hell happened. So they're out. So that's why the Texans are here. But this would be the first pick in the second round. They took Bryce Young, first overall. They took Michael Mayer, 12th overall, plug-in starters, quarterback, tight end. I'm going to go with B.J. Ojolari here. I am – screw it. I'm going Josh Downs. Here. They need another young wide receiver. Cooks is great, but I don't even know if he's going to be there moving forward. Nico Collins is all right. They need an alpha, and I think Josh Downs is that. He had a great season this year, and yeah, so let me save this, and here it is. Here it is. The fucking mock draft. I love this. This is so great. So let's go down real quick. 1 through 32, as you can see here. Texans start us off young. Anderson to the Seahawks. Carter, Levis, Tyree Wilson, Skoronski, Miles Murphy, Brisset, Stroud, and Verse. That's our top 10. What was your biggest surprise of this first round?
The biggest surprise of the first round in general, I'm probably Osiris Torrance in the first round is probably my biggest surprise. I've heard mixed things about him. He's going to be a controversial draft pick, I'm for sure, I think.
I think so.
I can see him being the back end of the first round player. I've liked what I've seen from him at times, but I've also heard some people who are a little bit more experienced working with offensive linemen than I am. He's more of a 45 to 65 kind of player in terms of where he'll get taken in the draft. So I've heard some controversial things about him. Him going in the mid-20s is probably the most surprising thing to me of the entire draft. That being said, I think picking Jared Verse at 10 was also a pretty surprising pick as well, and not for a bad reason. I like Jared Verse quite a bit. But overall, not too many surprises in this draft, which I think is probably a good thing at this point. I think we're locking in on the guys we believe who could be first-round picks.
No Anthony Richardson. Concerns?
No, I guess that should count as a surprise. That should probably count as a surprise.
Okay.
The only place the issue is the teams picking later in the draft. How many of them actually need a quarterback? Like once you get past, I'll say like 20. Once you get past like Washington, maybe the Giants, but like once you hit a certain point, you're not getting many teams that really need to pick a quarterback.
I mean, you're not wrong. All right, you're not wrong. But if you're Washington, maybe you do take him. If you're Tennessee, I mean, do you really trust Malik Willis? Like we've seen teams draft quarterbacks in the second, third, fourth round, play them a little bit as rookies. They don't really look too good. That offense looked awful with Willis. Willis is not ready. I mean, Richardson's not really ready either, but he's like Willis jacked up a little bit, like turned up. Honestly, I'm not really high on Richardson. I think he's more of a second or third round prospect. I think he's very similar to Malik Willis. A lot of issues with accuracy, big, fast, strong arm. I've seen a poor man's Cam Newton as one of the comparisons, and that's very fair. But the short and intermediate accuracy issues concern me. The going through progressions issue concerns me. And we heard a lot about those same things talking about Malik Willis in last year's draft. Progressions, not being able to make reads beyond his first guy. If his first guy's not there, he's running. All the physical talent in the world, but a lot of questions. So if Willis goes to the third round, I think maybe second for Richardson. But if I'm an NFL team, I'm not taking that man in the first round. Unless you're planning to sit him for 2 years, because that's what it's going to be.
And a team that I wouldn't honestly, the team that I think could sneakily pull it off might be Denver. Because they cannot move off of Russell Wilson anytime soon. His contract is too beefy. And not like Russell Wilson's been playing very good this year.
No, he's not. Not at all. So let me stop sharing that. Give our fans one more look at the board as we go down it. Giggity. All right. Simple. Rice to the Bucks in the first round. Crazy. Rice or Torrance. Couple of weird picks there at the end. We kind of went off the rails, but it's fine. That's what mock drafts do. And we're back. Woo! And finally, folks, I want to remind you that betting.net is not just sports betting. Betting.net compares the best online casinos, sportsbooks, etc. So sit back, relax, and play the top online slots, poker, and table games over at betting.net. Sam, do you have any final thoughts, questions, comments, or concerns?
No, I think we're all set. I was going to let you guys know if you want to check out any of my personal draft reports, because I do draft reports probably 4 or 5 days a week. About 2-page reports for every player. If you want to check those out, you can go follow me on Twitter at Sam_Teets33. There's also in my pin tweet a link to my newsletter, which has all of those reports for free. You can go back, check the archive, find all of them dating back to the summer, or covered over at least over 100 by now. I think we're over 120 at this point, and we're going to keep grinding, making sure we get a lot of players done, and hopefully get over 200, maybe 250 by the time the draft comes around.
I love it. I'm definitely going to be checking that out. I love that stuff. So follow Sam, Twitter, visit his Substack, check out SI, the Draft Bible. I am also on Twitter. I'm at DB Talking Sports, D as in Dan, B as in Bob. We're also on IG with the same handle. Give us a like, give us a follow, share this episode with your friends. Next week, we'll be back. We're not going to be doing a mock draft, unfortunately, but we will be breaking down some more prospects. As always, for Sam Teets, I'm Dan Kornhauser. Thank you guys for tuning in. Enjoy the start of bowl season, and we'll catch you guys